McLaren's darkest days toiling in the Formula 1 midfield are well in the past, but even in light of its strong progress over the last couple of years, it's a surprise to see it already emerge as a potential threat to Mercedes and Red Bull. After a hugely encouraging Imola round where Lando Norris showed searing pace in qualifying and banked McLaren's first podium of the season in the race, the 21-year-old claimed that the team can fight the top two teams when it gets everything right. That's even music to the ears of the team's former driver Lewis Hamilton, who said Norris did an awesome job in Italy and that it was so good to see McLaren challenging at the front. But is this step real? Where's it come from? And why is Norris the one leading the charge? We're going to get into all of that in this video, so all you need to do is watch along, give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and maybe hit subscribe if you haven't already. McLaren was undeniably impressive already in the season opener in Bahrain, where Norris said the team was close, not miles away from the top teams, and team boss Andreas Seidl said McLaren had made a good step forwards compared to the top guys over the winter. But Norris says that because testing and the first race took place at the same track, it was difficult to know exactly what to expect outside of Bahrain. McLaren came away from that race looking strong across the various comparisons made regarding team improvements year on year. But those comparisons had to be put into perspective, as 2020 benchmark Mercedes had fallen quite some way back, a legacy of the regulation changes that had stripped away performance at the rear of the car. So the reality could easily have been that McLaren was only closer to the front because Mercedes had slipped back. And we were wary of celebrating McLaren's progress too soon because it seemed like it was further away from Red Bull than last year, which suggested that the big team not hobbled by the rules had actually pulled away over the winter. So we compared the progress made by Red Bull and McLaren since December 2020's Bahrain race, and sure enough, Red Bull looked fractionally better. This table shows how much each team closed their relative deficit to the front in percentage terms in the 2021 Bahrain Grand Prix versus last year's. And the basic conclusion from that was Red Bull had made the fractionally greater relative step. One point of data isn't enough for firm conclusion, so we felt it could be slightly misleading to simply state McLaren was closer to the front, as that deficit relative to Red Bull is still important. After all, it doesn't matter how much you close on Mercedes if Red Bull finds half a second and is even further away. We were also hesitant because in the race McLaren was still more than a free pit stop behind the second Mercedes, which is fundamentally a big deficit and indicative of the progress McLaren still had to make. There was no doubt McLaren had done an excellent job with the integration of its new Mercedes engine and its respective car developments for 2021 to retain its position as best of the rest. But there was at least a question mark over how big a step it had really made versus Red Bull. Yours truly even wrote that the only concrete conclusion worth drawing was that the top teams were still out of reach. And then came Imola qualifying. Nice one, genius. Before I tuck into some humble pie, it's worth pointing out that while Imola was so overwhelmingly positive for McLaren, there were still signs of how big its deficit can be. In the race, once the team moved Norris ahead of Daniel Ricciardo to test his pace in clean air, Norris had an 11-lap run where he lost no real time to race winner Max Verstappen, who was fading at the end of his stint on intermediates. But the McLaren was no match for Hamilton's Mercedes at that stage of the Grand Prix, and then at the end of the race as well. While Norris did a tremendous job to hold on to a podium on softer tyres, he still shipped 23 seconds to Verstappen in 20 laps and was helpless to stop Hamilton charging through to finish second. Despite all that, what's fascinating and something I'm more than happy to have misjudged is that McLaren may have done more than just close up slightly. Norris reckons that when McLaren gets its 2021 car right, it can legitimately target Mercedes and Red Bull, and he admits that that was not at all something McLaren would have considered before the Imola weekend. After all, but for the track limits offence, he should have been on the second row of the grid on merit at Imola, just a fraction behind the lead Mercedes. Regardless of whether Red Bull underachieved, that shows nothing but serious performance. So McLaren's showing at Imola mattered so much for two reasons. First, it added a crucial second circuit to our bank of data from 2021, and McLaren performed well, improving its car throughout the weekend and established itself as third best yet again. Second, it was an impressive performance relative to last year, when McLaren found Imola one of its tougher tracks. Last year, McLaren had a Q3 marginal car at Imola, was 1.2 seconds from pole and 6 tenths behind Red Bull. Had Norris's best lap counted, it would have been within a tenth of both this time. We're still only 2 races into the new season, so caution must still be exercised, especially given the likes of Ferrari and AlphaTauri look so competitive that McLaren might not always even be best of the rest, and crucially, Red Bull did underachieve in qualifying at Imola. As a result, the qualifying spread was considerably closer compared to Bahrain. If Verstappen hadn't made a mistake, and Red Bull had been the 2 or 3 tenths clear that Mercedes thought it could be, most teams would have been roughly as far off percentage-wise as they were in Bahrain. But the top guys not making those mistakes is part of the challenge, and at the risk of drawing a new conclusion that will quickly be outdated and we'll have to make fun of in a future video, it seems that McLaren's peaks this season can be extremely high and will give the top 2 teams very little room for slip-ups. Norris's expected performance level relative to new McLaren teammate Ricciardo was one of the big talking points heading into the new season. Based on the 2 races so far, Norris has delivered on the need to raise his game to a new level, with Seidel saying he definitely made the next step and is flying at the moment. It's premature to draw any conclusions about where the balance of power will settle between Norris and Ricciardo, given the latter is yet to be fully comfortable with the McLaren. But we can say with confidence that Norris has started the season strongly and consistently. Now he's finished as best of the rest behind the Mercedes and Red Bull drivers twice. The contrast was very clear at Imola. Norris should have outqualified Ricciardo by 0.372 seconds before his deleted lap time put him behind on the grid. And he then comprehensively outpaced Ricciardo in the race, so much so that McLaren was proven entirely right to swap their positions early on. While it was always likely Hamilton would catch and pass Norris after the red flag restart, Norris did everything he could by overtaking Charles Leclerc immediately when the race resumed, and then drove faultlessly to bag a podium finish. And the fact Norris left Ricciardo behind with a 27.5 second gap between them at the checkered flag speaks volumes. Despite his relatively light-hearted persona, Norris is increasingly serious about his craft as a Grand Prix driver and has been working really hard to raise his game. He's become better at judging when to be aggressive and when to play it safe, and he's also worked to broaden his driving style, talking in Bahrain about learning from Ricciardo's approach, which Norris argued was better suited to the characteristics of the 2021 McLaren. Norris is well aware of the scale of the challenge he faces alongside Ricciardo, and while the Australian will get stronger, it was always essential that Norris capitalised on being the incumbent McLaren driver to start well in comparison. Now he's done that, the main challenge is to ensure he delivers consistently. And if you include his strong run to 5th in last year's Abu Dhabi season finale, Norris has been best of the rest in the last 3 Grand Prix. If he continues to make himself more adaptable and more consistent, and benefits from the added maturity that will come as he moves further into his 20s, Norris will simply keep getting better. Do you think Norris can keep up this form once Ricciardo is on top of the McLaren and at his best? And how realistic do you think it is for McLaren to repeat its Imola performance and trouble the top teams more regularly? Let us know in the comments, give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video, and hit subscribe if you're not already part of the gang so you don't miss any of our videos in the future.